I'm Mustapha K Darboe. I'm a reporter. I work for a local platform called Malagan. It's a newly established news website that focuses on public sector corruption. I freelance for Turkey News Agency based in Ankara and Justice Info based in Switzerland. I've won, I think, 8 awards from 2016 to 2019, 2018, because the 2019 one is yet to be done. So, I mean, awards are significant in that they give you an opportunity to review your work. So for example, if you work on a story and you submit your story for an award, and judges looked at the story and juxtapose it to other submissions and say this story is worth it, that means that that story has had probably a reasonable degree of impact on your community in which you work. And for journalism, that's the most fulfilled, that's the biggest fulfillment you can get in your career as a journalist. Because the whole point of journalism is to do stories that have an impact on the society. And awards look at basically that. They look at submissions that have impact on the society compared to other submissions. And I think that's one significant thing. So I try to, in the first place, it motivates me to do more. It encourages me to do more quality stories. It helps you to set some kind of a standard, because no one does a story for an award. But you would see that anybody who wins an award must have been doing something of standard. And when you win an award, you tend to want to keep at that level. And for me, that's the effect that the awards have on me. So you do your stories to meet a certain standard, and that's good for quality, and that's good for it's purposeful also, because that's what journalism is about. Journalism is about the society and less about the person who is conveying the message. And for me, it makes me fulfill my role as a journalist. So, well, journalism, unlike most professions, ours is a calling. Ours is a certain kind of a lifestyle one has to live. In order to be a good journalist, it has to be with you in your bed. It has to be with you in the morning when you wake up. It has to be with you at night when you go into bed. It has to be with you in the afternoon when you have a lunch. Journalism is a lifestyle, and that's basically what gets you to do the right thing. For example, if you are doing a single story, you don't come to work. We don't have an office. You don't come to work and say, I'm doing a story and at 4 I'm packing my bags, I'm going home. The story will never be finished. You make calls even you are at home. At 9 you make calls. At 8 you make calls. Sometimes you are at home, you receive a call, a source wants to meet you to give you something. So it's a life we live. It's not a job we do. And for me, that's also an important aspect, because you see people who look at you and say you don't have a life, you don't go to club, but you do have a life, because that life you live, that work you live, is the life you live, because you've chosen that life, and that life is journalism. I have gone through a number of transitions, because I've gone through a number of hands. I have had editors and colleagues and friends who, throughout my period as a journalist, I have interacted with, shaped the way I do things. and whose work tend to have a lot of impact on mine as well. That's why I like to tell people I'm a movement. I'm not an individual. I'm a movement of a set of ideals, but a movement of a group of people who are dedicated to the truth. So I focus now mostly on public sector corruption. I focus on the issues of audit reports, on the issue of investigations into public finances, financial reports. Now, before I used to randomly do a lot of things at the same time, but I was more like a very stubborn reporter who jumps from one politician to another, interviewing one person to another. And so over a period, and because of the people I interacted with and people I understood it, some my colleagues, some my friends, some my editors, I changed direction, and now I am more on public sector corruption issues and public finance issues. For example, I did a story this year on mining in the Gambia. I did a story on some land deals by GMPC, and I also looked into the corona financing, the money allocated for corona and coronavirus and stuff like that. So here is how I look at the awards, and this is how every other journalist should look at it. When a journalist does his work, you see, in this country we don't have peer review. Awards are a mechanism like a peer review. So you do your stories, a number of stories, and at the end of the day, there are categories in the awards. Whether you are an investigative journalist, whether you are a finance reporter, whether you're a political reporter, depending on the rounds you are involved in. At the end of the year, you are submitting your review for your story for a peer review. Forget about the awards and the idea of getting an award. Because most people, when you say an award, the idea that comes to them is that, okay, this is something you need to get to feel good about yourself. But it's not that. It's something you need to know whether what you are doing is having impact on the society or not. And there are a bunch of judges, professionals. Like in the past GPU awards, you have very senior journalists like Iso Williams, like Agnes Tomasi and the rest of them, Asum Sise and the rest of them. People who've been in the field and they've been here for a very long time and have done a number of stories and in different ways. Looking at your story and say, okay, this story is good. Even if they said it can be improved on, but them saying this story is good. It's a peer review. It helps you to understand that, okay, you've done something well. And it can help you to also adjust. And that's why I think everybody should submit your story for an award, because it's a review. So, like I briefly mentioned, journalism is a very difficult job, not funny at all. And it's not like a bank. We don't have a necktie and go and sit at a desk and work there for a few hours and go home. I mean, it's difficult to have information, especially in this society in which we live. So if you're going to be a journalist, you have to have the conviction. You have to have the conviction that one person hurt is everyone hurt. You have to have the conviction that that no one deserves to be maltreated, that the resources of the country is for everybody and no one must abuse it. These are some of the convictions that must be with you. You have to have the passion to stand up for humanity, for yourself and for your brother and your sister. For me, that's what matters in journalism. If you have that strong conviction to defend the rights of the people and defend the people's resources, it doesn't matter whether it affects you or not affects you. For me, I have the right heart to be a journalist. For me, the heart is what matters. If you don't feel it when someone is slapped, stay at home. You can't be one. The misconception, I mean, as of last year, for example, there was a lot of complaint. They've all given it to the GPU vice president. But the truth is that even before I became the vice president of the Gambia Press Union, I had won this award more than anyone had done. So nothing new had happened last year. Before last year, I won 4 in total, and last year I won 4. Now, but the whole point is that one should have faith also in the judges. There are a lot of professionals who are involved, and there is an awards committee. There is an awards committee that select the judges, and the judges looked at the store submissions independently. And I think that everybody who is a journalist should submit your work and have faith in the process. You would realize that in some instances, in fact, people were asked, but did you submit? And they said, no, we didn't submit, but we think that it was not going to be fair. Of course, there are a lot of complex issues involved in those complaints. I need not go into those. Some were not about me. In fact, most of the complaints were not about me. They rather caught up between certain personalities. And but I think that everybody should have a faith in the process and apply. I don't know some of those judges personally, but I've known them professionally, and I've known them to have a very high regard for the truth and high regard for honesty and justice. And that's for me enough for anybody to trust them and to trust the process as well. My favorite food is plazas. Very real. COVID-19 is very highly real.